Hi, today we are going to set up a Raspberry Pi cluster with K3s, which is the smaller version of Kubernetes, and you can find the official documentation here. This video is the visual presentation of this Medium blog post which I've already written, but we are now going to experience together how to set up one. You can have two Raspberry Pis or even one. The point of having more than one is that how to see Kubernetes gonna manage our nodes. So let's see how is it done. I'm gonna use the Raspbian Light OS for this installation, but as you see, they only have the 32-bit version in their imager. Unfortunately, in Docker Hub, some images are not supporting ARM32, so you're gonna need to download the image from here, which I'm going to share this link in the description, and then you just, like a normal Raspberry Pi OS installation, just select it, and then install it, write it into your SD card. You have to do this for each of your nodes. And but before putting them up, we need some configuration, which we are going to see in a second. Now let's wait until all of the Raspberries have their OS on their SD cards.
A few moments later.
Well, after the writing is done on each SD card of your Raspberries, the content will be like this. But before inserting them in, you have to add some configurations so your Raspberry can be accessed via SSH headlessly, like no monitors, you're not going to connect any monitors to them or any keyboard. So for that, you're going to need two files, and those files are the SSH and then this one. The content is like this. SSH is an empty file with just a space in it, so it doesn't ignore it. As soon as it sees it, it will enable the SSH for you. And this one is your Wi-Fi configuration, and as soon as a Raspberry Pi is booted, it will read this and connect to your Wi-Fi. Now let's do that. So after you are done with your Wi-Fi configuration, just simply copy these two files and put them into your SD card that you are going to insert into your Raspberry. And as soon as Raspberry reads the configuration, it will delete these two, and then it will connect to your Wi-Fi and open SSH for you. So now let's see how can we access. After inserting the SD card into the Raspberry Pi, you need to SSH into it. For that, we are going to use PuTTY, but you can also use the normal SSH command line, but this is easier. It has a UI, but of course you can just use the SSH command line. But the important part is that what are we going to connect to? The Raspberry Pi has a default host name, and it's important that you don't plug them all together if you want to use the host name, because then all of them have the same host names. Or you can use a tool, advanced IP scanner, and with this one you can get the IP of your Raspberry, and then here just you can put the IP. But we are going to use the host name, and by default the host name for Raspberry Pi is Raspberry Pi, and then you can open the connection, and the username for Raspberry Pi by default is Pi, and the password is simply like Raspberry, and then after that you can just connect to it. Uh, you have to do this for all of your Raspberries, and normally I will go and change the name of my Raspberry. So to do that, you can do sudo raspi config, and here the only thing I change is the host name. And since I'm right now on the master node, I'm going to call this like master P or master Pi, and yeah, that's it. And then you need a reboot on this device, and also the other ones you can name them differently, so this way you can find them easier, and when you also install Kubernetes you can see their names and you can find them by their names, and it's nicer. So for me, normally I install the master as master Pi and the worker as worker Pi 0 and worker Pi 1. So now let's get into the cool stuff. After renaming your Raspberries, you can access them via their names. And now we are going to configure the master pipe, which is the master node, and this is where we are going to start. If you take a look at the Rancher's documentation, you can find this command for installing Kubernetes on your master node. So we are going to just do that and wait for it. And in my case, it says no change detected because I've already ran this command, but for you it may take a little bit longer. Now let's install the worker nodes. For installing the worker nodes, you need to get this token from the master node. This is how the workers are going to authenticate themselves against the master node. And for that, we are going to simply do this. This will be our uh, node. This will be our token. And so I have this file configured here already to just put it here. This is some old token that I had before, and now you can just simply put the token here, and in my case this should be here, and this is the name of your master node, and just copy this and run it in one of your workers. There is something that is not documented inside uh, the K3s documentation, but maybe it's not really related to them. I had some problems running Kubernetes, connecting to it, and it couldn't boot up. So I had to run this the journalctl command, which basically is like the event viewer in Windows, and it will show you what's up, what's going on. And then I realized that it cannot boot. The Raspberry Kubernetes doesn't boot up, and the reason is a conflict in the boot configuration on Raspberry. So for that, we're gonna need to add some configuration into the boot configurations. But before that, let's also set up the other worker. Well, after configuring your workers and installing Kubernetes on them and getting back to your master node, if you run one Kubernetes command, you may encounter this error. And in some documentations, it's because that you have the swap enabled, but that's only I have came across that when I'm going to install Kubernetes on an actual Ubuntu server. But here I also have a swap off. So if I do swap on show, as you see, there's nothing there. But I have realized that there is a conflict in my boot configuration in the Raspbian OS, and I need to add this. But now let's see if this is also the case here. If you run the journalctl command and go really down, I did this because the first time I didn't know what's wrong, so I had to go through the whole logs, but we are going to do this again. These are not important to us. There is a one which says Kubernetes cannot start, and it says how to solve this. So now let's see. So if you see, it says fail to start lightweight Kubernetes, which means K3s, and here it says why. And you need to add this to your boot configuration. And for that, you need to open it as root and sudo nano root cmd line the text. And here it is, and just put it here. Of course without this double quotation, and then just save. Now if you do a reboot, you have to have the Kubernetes up and running on this node. You have to go through the other nodes, do the same, add this to your boot configuration, and they will not be able to access the Kubernetes API server on their own because they are workers. Uh, you don't really need the state. You can get the state later from the master node, which I'm going to show you in short. Well, now after configuring your boot and your Raspberries are up again, if you go back to your master file, you can, of course, by running sudo kubectl get nodes, you can see the state of your nodes. As you see, the master file already have roles, but the workers have nothing. Normally, I like to have a label on the workers too, because then with the node selector, it's easier to assign a deployment only to the workers or a specific worker. So for labeling them, use the following command, and this one is going to be the IP or the name of your node or your worker node. In this case, worker pi 0, and again the same for worker pi 1. And now if we check the nodes, they are labeled. So now let's have the dashboard up and running on our cluster. So for deploying the dashboard, uh, as in official Kubernetes documentation, you are going to need this command, and this command basically will apply this file. If you can also check it out. This will create the deployment, the pods, and everything that you need for having the dashboard up and running. So if now we go on and apply this to our master node, uh, sudo, you have to run these commands as root. So now, as you see, all of them are created. Actually, if I run this again, basically it is unchanged. If you change something, it will detect it on if on any of them you do a change, it will detect it, and this unchanged will be like configured. But now we have the dashboard installed, and the dashboard default namespace, if you see, I think is Kubernetes dashboard here, and in order to see if the pods are up and running, you have to run this kubectl get pods n, which is short for namespace, and uh, the namespace that you want to get the pods for. In our case, Kubernetes dashboard, and if you check, it says that this one, the metrics are running, the metrics is running, and the other one is still container creating, which may take a while, but now let's do this again. Now both of them are running. You can also describe a pod if you want, and see what has been done inside there. Yeah, here you have to also again say in which namespace you want this description from. So if you check here, it says okay, it has been first pulling the image, and then pulled, created, and then started it with the container runtime. By the way, by default, K3s is using container D as its runtime. I think we can also check that out from here. If we do this, yeah, as you see, it is container D. You can use Docker, you can use Podman, doesn't matter, but by default it is container D. So now we need to access this dashboard, and in order to right now access it, you need to make an SSH tunnel, because you need to do kubectl proxy, and then it will open it on port 8001, but then this is only inside the cluster, and then you cannot access it or see it on a browser. So in order to do that, we need to create a tunnel. So for that, we are going to close this window and then create a new connection. And in this connection, if you have noticed, when we did kubectl proxy, the address was like this. So we are going to use this, and in SSH we are going to tunnels, and then this is the source port is the port that we want this to run on our local machine, this host machine, the Windows, and let's say 9000. I hope it's not reserved already. And this is the address inside the master node that is going to be open. And then press add and get it back here and just type in masterpie and then connect. So yeah, if I right now access my local host on port 9000, nothing will happen. But if I run kubectl proxy, so Kubernetes also like port forwarded from inside into the master pie. Now we should be able to see the login page. Actually, the address to the dashboard is like this, and of course you need to change the port here. So as you can see, this is the login page into the dashboard. This dashboard is really secured. You have to SSH tunnel into it, and then create your own token to access it. I think it is alright because if you're working with IIS, you don't want someone else access your IIS. So I think it is fine that it is not always up. It will be up whenever you want log into it. And now let's actually log into it. So in order to do that, we need to create users. I've already added those YAML files for the users in my GitHub, but actually we can also get them from here too. These are basically the ones that is been available from K3S documentation. They have added it here, but now we are just going to simply use these ones. And in order to do that, we are going to get this file, and for convenience, we are going to always be as root and kubectl apply f. This will be the admin user, and now we also, as you see, it's created, and now we are going to have the row. Oh, okay, I think I have named them wrong, but yeah, you need both of them. This is the account, and the other one was the row. So now let's also do this one. Yeah, I did it. So kubectl apply f, and this is also created. And now you need to create the token, and this is the command for creating the token. If you do this, now you have the token. So if you do kubectl proxy, so it will be open, and then we just need to copy this token and refresh this to be sure, and then sign in. And as you can see, now we are inside the dashboard, but we don't have anything here yet. We are going to deploy. Let's deploy an application. Well, in the Medium article, I have already deployed an application which is in Scala and frontend is on Vue. But for that, you can go on and check on the post. I'm going to right now deploy something more useful. We are going to deploy Keycloak. Keycloak is an identity server, and we recently have found it pretty handy. So let's just deploy this one. By default, it doesn't have any configuration for database. You are going to add some environment variables for your database, but this is out of the scope of this video. But let's now deploy this and see how it works. We are going to also add ingress later after we have added this to access it. Now let's go on here. I went here and then now copied here the YAML file content and just upload. And as you can see, now we have them being created. And Keycloak has a readiness, has a liveness probe, so it will fail, the pod will fail until it is back up again. So now if you check, if you go to the pods, and the pod that is being created, if you check the logs, you can see what's going on in it. So it says containers creating. This is actually let's see the namespace is on the default, and this is the same as you just simply come to master and just do this. Doesn't matter if you right now stop it, it is creating it. If you say get pod, and then as you can see it's the same one as here, and we can also describe it to see what's going on in it. So it will be like describe path and this. You don't need to set the namespace here. By default it is default, and that rhymes. By default it's default. Okay, and now if you check here, you will see that it is pulling the image for Keycloak still.
One eternity later.
Well, after some diggings, I checked why the container is not coming up. I checked the log, and I realized it is the old classic problem. We are running our cluster on ARM64, and these images are only for AMD64. Fortunately, I could find someone who had created an ARM64 image. Let's see if it actually works. Could be really cool if it works. And now let's see, because otherwise you can of course create the image yourself, but uh, this is not what this video is about. So you just need to go, so let's recap. You just need to go to the deployments and then the Keycloak deployment, press edit, and then find the image. As you see, this is the image it is using, and now replace it with this one. And now update, and now it will try to pull this one, and now let's see if it is actually successful with this.
A few moments later.
I had a typo in the not the typo, you need the tag too. I forgot to put the tag. Now in the image you need to also add this, and now as you can see it is trying to pull the new image, and now let's see how is it going.
Eventually.
Well, now after some time you have to see all of them green. It may first go red, this one also may stay red, and that's because if you go to the path you will see that it has a readiness probe check, and it has failed sometime. But now it is up and running. You check the logs, it is there now. But now let's access it. Now let's see the service that is already created for this is of type load balancer, and we should be able to access it via its IP address that's exposed. So now let's see. As you can see, we can access this, and it is right now on 3 nodes, but we really don't want to access it with their IP addresses, because yeah, that's not the best way to do this. Uh, so for that we are going to have some ingress configuration. But first now let's log in into this to see if everything is fine. Yep. So now we have keycloak, but this is something else on its own time. But now let's have ingress controller for accessing it via the domain name. Okay, now we want to access keycloak only with master PI and no port. To do that, we need to configure ingress route. Ingress route is a component from traffic, and to configure that, I already have sample here. I will just copy this, and then we are going to change. We are going to fit it to our needs. So we are going to rename this people, and we are going to only we are going to say master pi domain should load this, and we only have one rule. We don't have any middlewares, and it is port 8080, and the name of the service. So what happens? So let's recap. Let's see what happens when a request comes in. This acts as a reverse proxy. This will check, okay, what rules I have, and now, okay, does the rule matches this? And if the host is master pi, and then since the entry point is web secure and you have a TLS configuration here, it expects that you enter HTTPS master pi. If it sees that, if it sees that, it will go to the given service, and then the service name here in our case is keycloak on port 8080. So now we are going to change this to keycloak, and this is the master pi, and we should be good. So upload, and now so this is still accessible, but now if we go to HTTPS master pi, then we also should be able to see this. And as you can see, you don't need to specify the uh, domain name anymore, and now you can access keycloak this way. Well, that's it for this video. I think this is the best way to learn. I hope I could have transferred whatever I knew, whatever I have learned with Raspberry Pi and a Kubernetes cluster. Before I have deployed another application in my blog, but I thought maybe it's nice that you also know about a new application that maybe it comes in handy for you. Uh, Thanks for watching. See you next time.